So I've had back-to-back consultations today. I didn't get a chance to review yours, so go ahead and just fill me in on your dog and what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, so I have he's a 9-year-old Dachshund mix. He's about 18 pounds, 17 on a good day. Um, he, I've had him for 7 years. I got him when he was 2, and I rescued him. So he came to me with a lot of issues.
Yep.
And they've gotten a lot better, but I've never really fully been able to get his sort of issues under control. So I guess that's what I'm hoping you can help me with, sort of take me all the way. So he is aggressive. He's human aggressive and he's dog aggressive.
Okay.
Um, they're sort of different, and I don't really know what to make of the dog issue so much.
Okay.
With people, he's reactive when he's being handled. So that's really what seems to set him off. He doesn't like to be picked up. He doesn't like to have his feet touched. Like he doesn't like to be handled at
Sure.
all. It's better with me. I can do a lot of things that he clearly doesn't like, but he kind of lets me do them at this point.
Sure.
I still can't pick him up all the time.
Mm.
And I think if anyone else tried to like handle him, he would try to bite them. So that's the human aggression piece. Um, he does bite. It's not as bad as it used to be, and it's not as frequent.
Okay.
Um, with dogs, I don't know. He's gotten worse over the past couple of years, but we just moved into a new building with elevators and with a bunch of dogs. So I might just be seeing sort of like a new him.
Sure. Because yeah.
Yeah. So he's fine with some dogs. Other dogs he like will lunge at and growl at.
Mhm.
Um, it seems to be more bigger dogs that he's more reactive to, but
Mhm.
it kind of depends. Um, yeah, I think that's it.
And I'm sorry, you got him at what age?
At 2.
At 2. Okay, so you did. Okay. So you've had him for 7 years.
And I would just like to say it has gotten better over 7 years. It has not been like the same level of bad.
And when they gave him, or when you adopted him, did they tell you about these issues?
I got him a very strange way. His origin story is odd. I rescued him technically from a fraternity at the college I went to. So
Okay.
these um
He's a frat boy.
he is. Yeah. He'll sleep until like 11 a.m. too, which I like to joke. Roots. But yeah, so these idiots in this fraternity, I guess I should be careful because you're recording this.
No,
Uh,
that's fine. I curse all the time. I call people stupid all the time. It's fine.
okay, great. So these idiots, what they drove to Iowa. This is the story I
Sure.
was told. They bought this dog to impress women, and he is very cute. And they, I'm serious, they brought him back to their fraternity. They
Okay.
did not train him. They didn't feed him. I'm told people like actually abused him. Like people would get drunk
Uh,
and like kick him, like
oh, sure.
him. So he had a really bad first couple of years. Um,
Okay.
one of the guys in the frat like saw this happening, intervened after a while, and like sort of kept him separated from the rest of the people. And
Mhm.
then couldn't keep him and didn't know what to do with him. And so anyway, I ended up with this dog that way.
Gotcha. That's a very it's the first time I've heard that.
Really?
Yes.
That's
I'm doing this a really long time. I've trained a lot of dogs. Yeah, met a lot of dogs.
never a frat
Okay.
dog.
So yeah, frat dog. Um, okay. And then what has inspired you to start now? Is it because of the new setting, like you're in a building where um,
Yeah, that's part of it. I think I just realized that I've made a lot of progress with him, but I've
mhm,
really been working around his issues, and I have never really figured out how to actually address what's going on.
mhm,
And so I think just being in this new setting has made me realize that it's not really sustainable. And
Sure.
I'm a law student. I've been a student for most of the time I've had him,
Hmm.
and I'm going to start working in about 9 months.
Hmm.
So my lifestyle is going to change a lot, and he's
Hmm.
going to need to have like a dog walker. I might need to have someone sit him, like if I have to go out of town for a day or two. And so just like things that I've been able to kind of get away with, I'm not
They're
going to
no
be.
longer an option. Yeah. Okay. So ultimately, your goal is for like him to get to a point where other people could care for him in case you need to travel or you're working all day. Okay. What's your neighborhood?
I live in the South Loop.
South Loop. Okay. Um, anything else I should know about him?
He can be a little territorial, not so much with me, but I think if another person tried to take away like a bone, he would
Hmm.
probably react to that.
Yeah.
Um,
I see that.
yeah, that feels like a secondary problem to me, but maybe it's not. So I'll throw
Yeah.
that.
Well, I mean, I don't believe that in anybody being able to do anything with a dog. It's not realistic. I mean, it'd be nice if that was, the reality, but it's not. And I'll explain more about how that works. Now, you taking something from him is different.
Yes.
Okay. But like a complete stranger, like grabbing something from him, I would anticipate, he's going to defend it, which is a normal behavior. May not be appropriate or like accepted amongst humans, but technically in his world, he's thinking this is my object and you're trying to take it. So you're stealing and I'm going to protect it. So, okay. Have you worked with a trainer before or anything to try to resolve these issues?
Yes. I worked with two trainers. One was really just like obedience training,
Sure.
which is kind of nonsense. The other one was like she said she seemed to think she could help with like aggression issues, but basically what I ended up with from her was like you should bribe the dog to do things
Okay.
with treats, which is fine. He is very he'll do almost anything for a treat, so
Good.
I can get a long way with that, but uh, it hasn't quite gotten me far enough, I would say.
Okay. And I'm assuming both these trainers were food based. What do you walk him on? Is he on a harness?
No, but I would love to be able to walk him on a harness. He tugs, or well, he doesn't anymore. He used to tug. That's one of the reasons I started working with a second trainer.
Hmm.
Um, Now he wears, I think it's a head collar, so it goes over his nose and hooks back here.
Leader.
Yeah, but it doesn't lead from the front; it leads from the back,
Okay, but it's on his.
like nose and head.
Oh, it's and it clips at the back.
Hmm.
Oh, I must. I don't think I've seen that. Um, okay, and you're trying to get him to harness.
Yeah, that would
Okay.
be.
Um, how did they try to use the food? Did they try to use food to counter condition his touch sensitivity?
Not really. I mean, most of what I worked with that other trainer on was the dog reactivity stuff. So she
Okay,
used it to sort of divert his attention,
sure.
which did work and did help. But I think just like being in a building with so many dogs that are in much closer proximity than when you're outside,
Yeah.
it's not always enough. She did try to use it to sort of like pick him up, and we never really got very far with that.
Because he would react negatively.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? All right. So I'm assuming you did research on us before booking a consultation. So you know how I train. I use e-collar and prong collar. Okay. Are you familiar with these
Yep.
tools? Um,
I mean, I know what they are,
okay.
but I've never used them.
Okay. So I'll educate you on that just so that you're aware of what it is and kind of explain how I go about this. So prong collar, I rarely use. Okay. If I do use prong collar, which is the spiky looking one that you might see on some dogs, I use it in conjunction with the e-collar. Okay. Mainly for physical control. So, like, to give you an example, I had a young lady. She was like probably 90 pounds, and she had a 150-pound Great Dane who was very dog reactive. Okay, so not a very good situation there. So we had to do prong and e-collar because if she turned the corner, because she lived in Wicker Park, and saw a dog and he blew up, we needed something that was going to immediately give her control. That's where prong came in. And then e-collar was her ability to relax him, but we didn't have to worry about her physical strength. Okay. Almost all my dogs are trained strictly on e-collar. Okay. And the reason why I do that is, one, obedience wise, it gets us off leash reliability. Behavior wise, when we're trying to correct aggression, the dog doesn't know where it's coming from. Okay. So it allows us to remain a neutral. And because with the prong collar, if you corrected them, it's directly coming from you, and that can potentially create more conflict. Okay. So it's not that it's not good to use prong collar. It's just I'd rather the dog not be aware of who's doing it and then see how that works. Okay. E-collar is simply, I'm not sure if you're aware of a what a TENS unit is. TENS. They use it at chiropractor offices. They use it at physical therapists. It's the machine that they put on your, like they put little probes and then it'll move your muscle. Okay. That's an e-collar. So they use the technology on people. If you've ever seen those videos on YouTube where they recreate labor contraction pains in men, have you seen that? Yeah. So that's a TENS unit, but obviously labor contraction pains are not comfortable. So they're operating at a higher level, but it's just contracting the muscles, right? That's what an e-collar does. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. So you're not electrocuting your dog. It's not like a taser or anything like that. It's just a muscle contraction. Okay. Now the higher.
Sorry. Can I interrupt you? So I like have no moral issue with this or anything, but my fear with using e-collar, and so I'm hoping you can explain to me why this is not a problem, and maybe you is that it will make you scared of me, but I guess you're saying he won't know where it's coming from, and so it will not do that.
Correct. Now let's say, because there's a lot of variables that happen here. Okay.
Sure.
Is he cannot connect that it's coming from you. Okay, that you're manipulating the collar. It also depends on how we layer in the collar. Okay, so most people think when we work with aggression that when I come in, I just max it out and then make the dog roll around. If we do that, we're going to make more issues. Okay, but that's not how it works. The first thing that we do, and this is actually what's going to help your reactivity, is teach. What's your pup's name again?
Duke.
Duke. To teach Duke how to walk correctly. Okay. So a lot of reactivity comes from a lack of formal training. So I know he's a small little guy, but regardless of him being 16 pounds versus 150-pound Great Dane, mentally, it's a very beneficial exercise. Okay, so my style of heel or leash walking is if I take 5 steps, the dog takes 5 steps. When I take 1 step, the dog takes 1 step. When I stop, the dog automatically sits. And I don't care what the setting is. Okay, so you could be in the middle of a PetSmart. You could be outside with a Grand Park with all these dogs and people walking around. He's going to give you that level of focus. Okay, now the reason why this helps reactivity is because if he's more focused on you, he shouldn't be bothered by everything else. Okay. So, and also he needs to have a reference point. So let's say he does become reactive and we start to use the e-collar to correct him. If he doesn't know what to do instead, he's going to get confused.
Okay.
So I train on the left side. So like if you were lunging and barking and I started remoting him at the appropriate number, you would see Duke back off and then position himself next to me. Okay, so we're using that as his reference point. So then he learns oh, if I lunge at a dog, this happens, but the moment I'm here, nothing happens. And then we build off of that. So let's say another dog walks by and Duke does not become reactive, then we don't do anything. So he goes, oh, if I don't lunge and bark, or whatever, nothing happens to me, right? But also nothing happens with the dog because he might be perceiving threat. He might be thinking, "Oh, you're a dog, and I don't trust you, so I'm going to try to, scare you to run or scare you away from me, so you're not a threat to me," right? So in order to like counter condition him, he has to one be corrected for the behavior, but then also be put in a situation where he's going to see that stimulus come by, but not be corrected, but also nothing bad happens. Okay. So that starts the foundation for the, in this case, this would be a behavior modification. Okay. And I go and we see what does this fix? Okay. So heal is typically 2 classes. We teach the first class, which is teaching Duke what to do. Then the second class, I would ask you like how to go for the week. How is the reactivity? You would say, Jesse was great. Like most of the reactivity's gone, but when I'm on an elevator with the dog, or if like we're in the hallway and it's really close, he has a problem. And I go, okay, and you're like outside, he's great. I go, awesome. We're gonna make this change. We're gonna, make a few tweaks. Then we work on the second half of heal. I see you the third class, how to go, and then you just give me your insight. And then we're just making adjustments as we go along until we remove that reactivity. Okay. The tricky part here, so the reactivity is the easiest part.
Okay.
The tricky part here is the touch sensitivity. Okay, because if he has a problem with you, and I know it's gotten better with you, that's pretty. I don't want to say bad, like oh my god, it's terrible, but like most of the time, dogs will be fine with the owner, but not with everybody else, right? Yeah. So, what we would end up doing here is one, I would highly suggest that you muzzle condition him if he's not been muzzle conditioned already.
Yeah. I would need help with that. I tried to do that and I messed up somewhere along the way, and now he's a little scared of the muzzle, which is
okay. And what does that look like?
He like doesn't want to put it on. He avoids it. He kind of turns his head. He backs away. I can usually eventually get him to put it on with a treat if I like make him pull his nose into it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't use it that often, or I didn't, and so I think that's part of the problem. He started associating it with like the vet and like things where
oh sure, yeah, like those, yeah, where you absolutely needed it, but he was going to have a negative experience. Yeah, so
you'd have to help me undo that, but
yeah. So the way we muzzle condition, and we would provide you with videos, is most people use treats to like train the dog to like the muzzle and stuff. I don't. I use their actual food.
Okay.
Okay. And if he doesn't eat because he doesn't like the muzzle, then he doesn't eat.
There's almost no chance of that happening. I'll tell you right now.
Of what?
If he has to put the muzzle on to eat, he will do it.
Good. So we use that to our advantage. Okay. And then, so every time he eats his meals, he would be eating it out of the muzzle. Okay. And we would remove any and all other forms of food and treats. And so we would strip down, like, let's say he gets his food and then he gets like a biscuit and then he gets his like little treats throughout the day. We remove all the excess stuff and it's solely just his food. Okay. Because it increases the value of everything. And then, like, let's say he skips a couple of meals, just for example, and he's like, man, it's been 3 days and I haven't eaten. And the only time I eat or the only time I see food is when the muzzle comes out, is he'll start to go like, well, I guess it's my only opportunity. Right. So then it starts to heighten the value of the food because he has to eat, but now he has to eat out the muzzle. And then we build off of that. So eventually he's able to just wear it and not have a problem. Okay. We definitely, that's something that you'd want to start as soon as possible. And even just revisiting like the whole like just treat for the muzzle until we can get you the videos is fine for now, because muzzle conditioning is it's a toss up. Like some dogs, no problem, they learn real quick. Other dogs, it could be like a 2-month process. So if you at least start that now, by the time we get to the point of needing it, we at least have a foundation in play.
Okay.
If for whatever reason he were to really have a problem with the muzzle, we can do what we call force conditioning, which means using the e-collar. Okay, but it's not pretty. It's usually stressful for the dog and the person. But we've had to do it, in 2020 probably like a handful of times. But once we force conditioned, typically it's not a problem. and the dog just accepts it. Okay, but we would definitely start with counter conditioning first.
I think he'll respond to the food, and I'll say too, the type of muzzle that I had before that I was using was the vet suggestion, and it's the kind that actually goes right around his snout. So I
Mhm.
got a basket
Yeah.
one that I haven't really been using. So
Mhm.
I think maybe it won't be so bad with that because he's not quite so constrained.
Sure. Yeah. So you would use a basket style because he's able to uh, drink water and eat food, open his mouth to pant appropriately or whatever. So what I would do is if you just take like a Ziploc bag and you put it inside the basket and you just fold over the sides and you just kind of punch it in so that when you throw the kibble in, it's not falling out of the muzzle. And you just hold it so he eats his food. Okay.
Okay.
And I have a video, and I'll tell Maria to send it to you so that you can watch it and begin that process. Okay. And if you need more help with it, you just let us know. But typically with muzzle conditioning, it's so easy that I tell people don't waste the class on it. Just watch the videos and do it as you go about your day with them.
Okay.
So the reason for the muzzle is in order to press that touch sensitivity safely, the muzzle comes into play. Okay, because nobody wants to get bit, right? Um, and the way it would work is the best or most effective form of training is the balance between positive and negative. Okay, so like food, which the one or two trainers used either for the obedience or for like the redirecting with the reactivity, whatever. But once it came to the pickup, right, he was like not having it, right, because the stress of being picked up was greater than the value of the food. Okay, so that makes sense. So if that happened when we had e-collar, because I've done this before, it was a Westie who was the same issue. Uh, when the owners would pick him up to like dry him off and stuff, like it was a problem. So the e-collar can be used to teach obedience, and it can be used to also correct behavior. Okay, so I like to think of the e-collar as a bite on a button. So dogs, as you're aware, with Duke here, they use their mouths or nipping and biting to correct, right? So like if you pick up Duke or somebody picks up Duke that he does not like, he will nip or bite at them or bite them to tell them, don't touch me, right? So he's using an aversive or a punisher to get people to leave him alone, right? So the person goes, I don't want to get bit. I'm not going to touch you. He goes, great. That's exactly what I wanted. Okay. So food doesn't work there in the sense of like, one, in that case, the stressor is too great, but also dogs don't give each other treats, right? Dogs just bite each other. So dogs are all about teaching each other what not to do. They don't really do positive reinforcement like humans do, okay? Positive reinforcement plus positive punishment work really well together, but positive by itself almost always isn't going to get anywhere, okay? So the way I'd approach that is once we covered the leash walking stuff, because one, the reactivity. Two, it teaches Duke how e-collar works, how it turns on and how it turns off. Okay, because he has to have an understanding of it. He's not meant to have a box on his neck that's going to contract his muscles to like communicate with them, right? So once we get that down, then we start the touch sensitivity exercises, and then of course we'd have to have the muzzle. So that if I go to pick up Duke and he starts like flipping out, and I can correct him with the collar to stop the behavior, right? And he goes, oh, that's weird. He's like, I threw a fit and then this happened, but if I don't do anything, nothing happens, right? And then I'll put him back down and then I'll pick him back up again. Maybe he throws a fit. I correct him with the collar. I put him back down again. I pick him up again. He does nothing. Now I do food. So now there's a difference, right? If you act out, there's a negative. If you don't do anything, there's a positive. And that's what's going to help clear up in his head just this whole touch issue. Okay. Now, the one thing here I want to clear up is that with you, you're going to most likely get the most success. because he's known you for 7 years, he trusts you and all that stuff, right? Is he'll be most comfortable with you, but don't expect that any random person could just come and pick up your dog. Okay. Because it's still, for him, it's going to be the whole context of, I don't know you, and you're just coming into my personal space, and then you're just jumping right to this like action, right? Is the person would have to be instructed or taught how to appropriately handle him. Okay. So, but in terms of the reactivity stuff, that's not a problem because that's just like don't lunge at dogs. You know, just like mind your business and ignore everybody else. The touch sensitivity is trickier in the sense that for those that are going to handle them, they'll have to be taught. Okay. Now, I've worked with dogs in the past, same issues as Duke here, and they've had dog walkers. The one problem that you may come across is because most businesses with dog walkers, it's a revolving door.
Sure.
Okay. So then it's like you work with one dog walker, and then 2 months later you have a new one, right? And then a month later you have a new one, right? So it's rare that a place will have a dog walker and you'll have that same person, unless you happen to find someone who operates their own business, because it's them, and that like you're going to get the same person every day. Okay. So when you get to that point, you know, and I can give you tips just throughout the years that I've learned if you're trying to get a consistent person. And I've worked with dog walkers in the past with dogs that have had issues, and where I'll come along and then see what's going on and then teach them and guide them through everything. And in this way, Duke can be handled safely or as safe as possible. Okay.
So I'm actually moving to New York next fall.
Okay.
So in a while, but
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, tips would be appreciated. If you know anyone in New York, I'm assuming you don't.
Where in New York?
I will probably be in Brooklyn.
Is that anywhere by Buffalo?
No, New York City. No.
So I am ignorant of. I'm geographically ignorant.
That's okay.
I know of a couple of trainers in New York.
Okay.
Okay, that I could refer to you. Hopefully they're close. I think the one is actually in New York, New York, and then there's the other guy who I said was in Buffalo. So I made a note here about that. Okay, well, I'm trying to remember his name. All right. Yeah. So that's the issue you're going to come across.
Okay.
Okay. Um,
That's workable. That would still be a huge improvement for me.
okay. The other thing would be, I mean, because in 9 months, what is that? Where does that put us? We're January, so that's like October. But you're not moving to New York until fall of 22.
No, fall of 21, fall of this year.
Oh, fall of this year. Okay. Um, okay. I'm just trying to think of like, you know, how this would work for you. So essentially, when you need the dog walker and stuff, you'd already be in New York. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Alrighty. So in terms of like cost and length of time and stuff, like how I go about this is I look at what you're needing, what the problem is, and I give you the option of like, well, you can either refocus on the problem and what I know you'll need, and then you have the options of if you want more, you can do more. Okay. Obviously, the biggest thing here is the touch sensitivity, and then the leash reactivity. Okay. So I have 4 programs, 3, 6, 9, and 12-week programs. You're in like the 6 to 12 week. Okay. The 3 week is really short. It's really only for leash reactivity. So if that's all you cared about and that's the only problem, that would be you. But you have the touch sensitivity stuff. Okay. So if you did the 6-week program, the way I would break this down is the first 2 classes would be on the heel, because that's going to resolve the reactivity. That's going to give the baseline for what e-collar does. And then it's possible it can also help with touch sensitivity. Okay. Because once a dog is being disciplined, it changes their perception of things. Okay. So like right now, I'm assuming he's not had any like formal discipline in the sense of like having a negative consequence for a behavior.
Not really. I mean, I do my best when he sort of gets aggressive with me, but I don't think I'm really disciplining him. I just do it anyway. Like he just doesn't get his way, but I don't think that's
Okay. So you don't give in. Sure. Okay. So like, because most people will say like, "Oh, Jesse, I discipline my dog," and I'll say like, "What does that look like?" And they'll say, "I clap my hands and I say no," and I go, "That is not discipline to a dog." Right? Dogs bite each other. So there is a potential that that touch sensitivity could come down. I wouldn't really put my hopes on it, but it's possible. But most likely, it's going to be a process. Okay, so we do 2 weeks on the leash walking stuff. Make sure the reactivity is resolved and everything, and then we would start jumping into touch sensitivity. Okay, of course we have to have that muzzle. So the third class, if you're saying, "Hey Jesse, I'm still struggling with the muzzle," we might have to make that a session, right? Try to figure out like how to just get him to accept it, because you won't be able to safely make progress until he can actually be muzzled. Okay, so that's a really big variable there. Once we have that in play, I would give you exercises to do with him. Okay, that you would do yourself with the muzzle and everything. And then at that point, I would most likely not see you for a few weeks in between. Okay, because that's going to take time. So the first 4 classes, it'll be week by week, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then once we hit that point, if your main concern is just touch sensitivity, so that people can handle them, uh, I would show you what to do, give you some exercises, and say like, check in with me in 2 weeks. You check in with me in 2 weeks, and you're like, "Hey Jesse, he's making good progress, but it can be better." Then I would say, take another 2 weeks. Okay. Then you come back and I go, "How's it going?" You're like, "I think we're good. We're ready for the next step." And I go, "Great. Come on in for lesson now." Okay. Because he's been doing this for 7 years at least that we know of, possibly more. Right. So to break a habit that's been done for our practice for 7 to 9 years is going to take time, because even if you did like a 12-week program, like 12 weeks in the span of 9 years is the blink of an eye. Okay. And then once we get to a point where you're like, "Hey, like he's good, he's comfortable with me, I actually feel safe picking him up without the muzzle and stuff," then I would say like, "Okay, cool. Now I can show you like how we work with other people, or start pushing his touch sensitivity, with like a dog walker or like a friend or whoever coming over, to kind of start opening his bubble, getting him used to it." And then it's just continued work from there until you get him to a point where he's pretty stable. But again, uh, don't think that like a friend could just come over he's never met before and just pick him up and expect nothing to happen.
I don't think that. And everyone who comes to my house knows that the rule is that you cannot pick up.
Rules. Leave Duke alone.
I can tell. I mean, he's very friendly. He does like people. He just you can't pick him up, and people know
Sure.
that. Um, so no, that's fine. I do not expect to like snap my fingers and for him to be better, but I think I want I would like to make improvement, and I would especially like to know how to make like just have the tools to do anything helpful because
Sure. Okay. And that's good actually that he's friendly. It's really just like the boundaries of being picked up and stuff. Sure. So yeah, so that's good. So the 6 week program, that's what I would uh
start with.
yeah, like that will cover that stuff. And if that's all you're caring about, then you should be fine with just 6 classes. Okay. The 9 and 12 week programs were to be if you needed more control, which if the issue is just like him being picked up, does he have any like neck sensitivity?
I think maybe it's not as bad. I don't know that he would bite someone, but it's hard because I live by myself and I'm like the only one who really cares for him regularly. So I just don't know how he would react to another person. He's fine with me around his neck.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Um, and that stuff we can test in the training, whatever, because we have like special. I have a special sleeve that allows me to work with dogs. Depending on his size of his mouth and stuff, we also use like the welding gloves.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like for the smaller dogs, we can put welding gloves and they can try to bite, and we're not going to get hurt or whatever. So we can test him out with that as well. So that if he does try something.
I think he might have some sensitivity to the neck, and it's like feet as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah.
All the things. But yeah, he you would probably want to use the pillow, the cushion, I'm gonna say. He's very quick.
Sure.
He's he's stronger than you think for a dog his size. He's like a little yeah, he's a little
Sure.
stronger than you think.
Yeah. And like the touching of the paws and stuff, all stuff that can be worked on. So yeah, so there's the 6, and then 9 and 12 would just be if you needed more like obedience control, which I'm not really picking up that vibe here, because it doesn't sound like obviously you would take him to a dog park because he's reactive or whatever. It's really just like I want to walk my dog, not have him lunge at dogs or whatever, and then have someone be able to care for him.
Yeah. If you could teach me to how to introduce him to another dog, that would be helpful. He does get along with certain dogs and he does play with like
Okay.
friends.
Oh yeah, that's good.
It's not every dog, but I want to make sure that when I'm introducing him to new dogs, I'm doing it in such a way that's going to minimize the possibility that he'll.
Yeah, so that I can help with as well. Muzzle also comes into play there, just because for the other dog and their owner, like just helps them feel relaxed. If anything happens, nothing's going to happen. And also for you, you don't have to worry about if he tries to do something, is it going to start a fight or whatever. That in itself is also just a singular class,
Okay.
because it's really just information and education, right? Like this is how we go about introducing a dog who's not the friendliest, but is clearly capable of it if done correctly. Okay. So then in terms of like the breakdown, because there would be 2 on the heel, 1 potentially on muzzle conditioning if that doesn't go well, 1 on the touch exercise, and then 1 on the dog to dog intro, which then leaves you with a 6th one. If you're fine with that, I don't care. Okay. If you'd rather have a little bit more wiggle room, then there's like the 9-week program. This way you have more classes to follow up with. But that's really just personal preference. Okay. Now you could always do 6 and then buy 3. But the way before I used to prorate it, but now with COVID and everything that's happened, everything is just you pay for the program that you're going to get. So if you get 6 and you want to pay for 3 extra ones, you wouldn't get a prorated price. You would just pay whatever the fee is for 3. Okay. Or you could buy a singular class or whatever, which is more expensive per class than if you were to do a bundle, but that's all completely up to you. Okay. But definitely with 6, I think we can get a good chunk of stuff done. Then it's really just time to recondition these behaviors. In terms of the collar that he would need, you should be fine with and Maria will send you this information, the Dogtra 280C. It's meant for dogs 35 pounds and under.
Okay.
So he's in that weight class. It's a smaller box, so it doesn't look like this big old hulking thing on his neck. And then it's a half-mile range. It's fully waterproof. It's the best collar, in my opinion. And they last for years. Okay. So then, any questions so far?
No, this has been very helpful, and I'm sad that I didn't find you sooner.
It's okay. So then the next thing or the most common question that I get is just when does the e-collar go away?
Oh, that is a good question.
Yeah. In my book, when you need it, it doesn't. Okay. So do you drive?
Yes.
Do you go on the expressway?
Yes.
Do you go the speed limit?
No.
Okay. So I don't either. Okay. So, and I'm not going to report you to the police. You're fine.
Literally no one goes the speed limit.
So, right. Most people don't go the speed limit. And the reason is it's called opportunistic behavior. Okay. So if you're to be on the expressway and you're going 90 and a 70 and you see a squad car, what happens?
You slow down.
Slow down, because now you don't want to get the ticket. Right now there's threat of consequence. So it's a part of instinct or survival instinct, opportunistic behavior. All animals have it. So for dogs, he'll learn when that collar is on and when it's off. Okay. So it's kind of what I call a cop on a collar. Okay. So the way this could potentially pan out for Duke, okay, and I'll give you different ways it can pan out because I don't know until we start working with them, and then time happens. Okay.
Mm.
Worst case scenario, you move to New York, Duke needs to have someone handle him or whatever, and you find a dog walker who's willing and happy to use e-collar or whatever, and you show them what to do, is there's an adapter that you can put on the collar so that Duke can wear the collar for an extended period of time, right? So then you leave, he's collared up, everything's turned on so that when your dog walker comes over, if anything happens, they don't have to worry about, crap, how am I going to put a collar on this dog that I can't even touch? Okay. Or the presence of the collar itself just keeps Duke in check. And he's like, collar's on, I'm not going to try anything. Okay. So it's just the presence of it just allows whoever's going to care for him to care for him easier. Okay. The other way it could work out is maybe he gets better with the touch sensitivity, and obviously with the leash reactivity, that's different because that's an outside. You're going to be outside. There's going to be dogs he doesn't know. Is that he need the collar to keep him in check for the reactivity, but he's gotten to the point where the dog walker can actually put it on him, and we don't have to worry about him reacting negatively there. Okay, and then it's the presence of it allows the dog walker to correct any reactivity, or again, the collar keeps him in check that we don't even see it. Okay, now those are kind of like the two scenarios that can happen. And I worked with a couple of dogs that were pretty not good with being touched by people, and they learned these contexts, right, where the dog walker would come over and it was the same person that was trained on how to do it correctly, and over time the dog was fine with that person. Okay. When it comes to you, again, you should make the most progress because it's you.
Yeah.
You spent so much time with him, right? And now you're just kind of balancing things out. Is that you might find you yourself get to a point where you don't need the collar for like the touch stuff. You'll only need it for like the leash reactivity. Okay. So as long as you're fine with that concept, there shouldn't be an issue. Okay. Because people always like, if the training is so good, or if I'm such a good trainer, why do we need to have the collar after the fact? And I tell them because of opportunistic behavior. Okay.
No, that makes sense. Duke is very crafty and he's very smart. I'm sure everyone says that about their dog, but he actually is very smart. And so I think he will pick it up very quickly what's going on.
Sure.
So no,
Okay.
that's, I just would like to see any improvement. I feel like I have a very low bar because I'm in for so long.
Sure. Yeah, it's super common. You know, like people have a low bar because they've dealt with it for so long, or they've worked with so many trainers and that no one's gotten anywhere, and they're just kind of just a little bit of progress is fine. And I'm like, no, we'll make plenty of progress. It's just you got to do the homework, okay?
Yeah, I will, and yeah, I'm happy to do whatever needs to be done in terms of keeping the e-collar and using
Okay.
it.
The next thing would be I can only take you as far as you're willing to go. So I know Duke is on the smaller side, right? He's a 16-pound dog. Is as we're working, like let's say for example, the leash reactivity and teaching the heel, maybe it doesn't fix the problem. Like he's still being reactive. It's not uncommon that we would just have to find. We have to have an aversive great enough to deter the behavior from happening again. So the e-collar goes 0 to 127 in increments of 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 127, right? The higher the power, the higher the level of discomfort. So like, let's say he's super reactive and I go, sorry, but I believe he needs 85 to like stop the reactivity, right? And I see you the next week and I go, how was it? And you're like, Jesse, it was terrible. He was so reactive this week. And I'll tell you or ask you, how high did you go? And you'll say 35. And I go, 35 is not 85. So we're not going to make progress on that behavior. Okay. That's one of the biggest deterrents or the biggest factors actually of why people don't make as much progress with their dog is because they feel bad going higher. Okay. But you got to look at it from his point of view is dogs bite each other, right? And even if you maxed out the collar, you would never do the damage that a dog bite would. But we can get up there in terms of discomfort. Okay. I don't foresee that here, but I just want you to be aware so that this way, once you start the training, if you're like, yeah, I'm fine. If that happens but it'll fix the problem, I'm ready to go. So we don't have any hiccups in the training. Okay. The way we do training is we do start low and we work our way up. So we don't pick the number, Duke will pick the number. Okay. If I can be on 10 out of 127 and everything is perfect, then 10 is our number. Okay. Maybe for leash walking and reactivity, his number is 15, but for being picked up, his number is 45. Like, that's not uncommon either. Okay. So as long as you're willing to follow through and commit and go to the extent needed to correct the problem, we'll get it done. But that's just, it's just part of the process. Okay. This won't screw up your dog mentally. It won't screw up your dog emotionally or physically or physiologically or anything like that. He already doesn't like these things. Okay. So what we're trying to do here is just balance them out. We'll use both positive and negative, because dogs aren't meant to be picked up.
I
Um,
tend to be like a purse dog. I just need to be able to handle him if there's,
yeah,
a
which I
problem.
understand, right? Yeah, like you got to do stuff with them, which is why you have to pick them up. But in nature, like he wouldn't be picked up. So yeah. Anything
Uh,
else?
I would not venture into the e-collar by myself, but if I've done a lot of research on you and I kind of trust your expertise. So if you tell me it's okay, I'll trust you on that.
Yeah, I've built my career on e-collar. So like every review that you see that's based on training, except for I think maybe one, is all e-collar trained dogs. It has a bad rap because of um, in the past when e-collars first came out, they weren't as refined as they are today. The highest they would go was 5. So 5 and 127 would be the same. But now I have 122 divisions, so it's much more refined. Also, it just comes down to how people approach it. People usually think again that it's just like max out the collar and punish the dog, and that's not how it works at all. Like there's a process to it, which is why with recording everything, we always encourage people go to our YouTube channel. Lesson ones are great because no one knows what they're doing. I have one right now, and if you happen to see a lesson 1 and it looks kind of like, wow, this is not pretty, it's because that dog has behavior issues. So it's not the e-collar making the dog be that way. It's the dog is very defiant, and we have to break that down in order to make progress. Because the more easier dogs, or the dogs that are friendly and everything, are pretty straightforward. Okay. Um, any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
So Maria will reach out, and she'll send you the link for the make and model that I suggested. I recommend that once you get it, you read your manual. You turn it on and fiddle with it. You don't have to use it, just fiddle with it. Your collar or your remote should go up in increments of 1. So if you feel like it kind of seems jumpy, you probably have a lemon. Okay. So if that's the case, let us know, return it, and we'll just push your class back so you don't show up with the bad collar.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's just a waste of a class. And then she'll send you the pricing and then a couple of forms or whatever to fill out, and then she'll get you situated on the schedule. Okay.
Okay. And then the classes are at your facility. They're not outside, right?
Correct. So like we have a couple of options. One, in the summertime, because of COVID, we had started doing the training at Oz Park, which was great because it's super busy over there. It's very distracting. But then once the cold set in, not so ideal. Plus, there's no one there now. So now we have my facility. It's 13,000 square feet, so plenty of space to move or work with. We also still do home to home. It just now home to home comes at a higher price.
Okay.
But you can come to my facility and we can get all this stuff done, here. It's not a problem. And in terms of transferring the training here to your home, like with the leash reactivity, it's actually pretty straightforward because of how e-collar works. So I'm not worried about that. If you happen to need an in-home session for whatever reason, like just maybe you're struggling with something, what we can do is I'll send one of my trainers, Enrique. He's been doing my home to home for those who they're not, how do you say, wanting a fully in-home program, but it's just kind of like a one-off thing. So he goes and he kind of helps ties up any kind of loose ends, and it's no extra cost. It counts as your class.
Okay.
So that's always an option as well. Otherwise, the touch sensitivity stuff and all that other stuff that we're dealing with can be done here because it's really like this is what you do and how you do it, and then you of course just take the time to practice at home. Other than that, that's pretty much it. Any other questions?
Is there any delay in terms of your schedule? I don't know how busy you are, but will we be able to start once I get him muzzle conditioned and I get the collar?
Yeah,
Or
you can start as like you can even start and like so I would start muscle conditioning as soon as possible, and you could start. Let's say there was availability as soon as next week, whatever, right? And we would get as far as we can, and then I might even test the muzzle here, and then see like where he's at, and then I might say like you know what he's going to need some time, and you can take the time to muzzle condition him, or we can try to condition him here using remote collar, just so you can continue making progress, so you don't get stuck. Okay,
okay,
so you can actually start the training before having them fully muzzle conditioned.
okay,
It's just by the time that we're going to do the touch sensitivity stuff, we would ideally like that to have it already be done, but we can help you with that as well.
got it. Okay, great.
Anything else?
No,
All right. So it was a pleasure talking to you. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, Marie will get in touch with you. And if you need anything else, you just let us know.
great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care now.